Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There is no other place that I would rather be than right here today, because this will go down in history, and we will read about it. Well, my grandchildren and my children will read about it, and they can understand that I need your heart and you need my heart. We need the hearts to get together, because this is quite a momentous occasion. And then there was Nigton. And then there was Nigton.
All right.
You see, I was born the last of 8 children, the parents of whom were Professor Johnson. That's what they call him, not Professor Johnson, but Professor Johnson. And Elsie Mark Johnson. So, I being the 8th child, the very last, all the others are. But you see, I have children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews who are coming along, and they will benefit from what we're doing here today. Now, Professor Wainwright Johnson was quite a man. He told me many times about having come to Nigton, and he found out there was one road in and you had to turn around and come out. Well, he saw some men sitting on the porch of a store, and I'm sure you who have been here a long time know that one store. And he asked the question, "Where is your school?" And the reply was, "We don't have a school." He said, "You don't have a school and you have children here?" "Yes, we have children here, but nobody thought enough of us to build us a school." And knowing my dad, he said most emphatically, "You will have a school. You will have it." And of course, Daddy, along with some other outstanding people who were here in Nigton, got together and they wrote 2 foundations, one of which was the Slater Foundation. And I'm not sure, but I think it might have been the Ford Foundation. Got funds, and there was built a school. Now, Daddy was a great educator. You see, he taught me things when I was a little child that others might have had to wait until college to get that kind of information. But he said, you know, children can learn anything. So you might as well teach them what they need to know. And he set out to do that with his children. Now, I tell you what, the other brothers and sisters were so much older than I that it was almost like I had Dad and Mom to myself. And of course, August the 27th, I will be 83 years old. And I had some good years with my mother and my dad. Let me tell you about Mom and Dad, because they were so interesting. Mom was a good-looking, a little bit sassy. You know, she would say what she had to say. and she would not hold back anything. Daddy was calm, rational, and very loving. And of course, when Dad and Mom might differ on a few little things, Dad would say, Elsie, just come here and sit right here with me, and he'd put his arm around it. We're going to talk this through. And Daddy, being 13 years older than Mom, would say, oh, Mr. Johnson, you just want to talk through everything. He said, yes, that's what we need to do, Elsie. And of course, he would get her to do that. And I have seen them differ, but work through the differences so that there was a good outcome. And I learned from that. Sometimes I might not use it all the time, but I learned. You see, Daddy was a scholar, and he was a true educator. Daddy graduated, yes, from Prairie View Normal. That's what it was called when he was in Prairie View. Prairie View Normal, Normal. And during that time, you could go to Prairie View Normal, spend 2 years, and come out with a teaching certificate. So that's what he did. But he heard that a scientist named George Washington Carver was in Tuskegee Institute. So he decided that he wanted to go there. Well, he went, and George Washington Carver took a liking to him because of his abilities. And George Washington Carver said to my dad, you know, I could give you everything that I have learned, that I have discovered, and you can take that and carry on. Well, what George Washington Carver didn't know was Dad was married and had 1 child. So he was in Tuskegee for the summers, and he would go back there just to be with George Washington Carver and learn all about what he was doing with the potato, you know, how many products he could make from discovering and working and finding out everything he could about the potato. And you know, I did not know until, see, I live in Dallas, and there's an African American museum there. And they brought the George Washington Carver exhibit to Dallas. And of course I went. And what I saw there was a rolling pin that Daddy had made for Mom, but George Washington Carver had one in his exhibit. I said, this is where my daddy learned to do that. My mom rolled a lot of biscuits with that rolling pin. Oh yes. Now, Daddy, as I said, was a scholar and a very, very smart man. He wasn't going to ask Mom to marry him until she had gone to college for at least 1 year. So he arranged to take some students to Prairie View A&M, well, it's Prairie View A&M University now, it was Prairie View College then. He took them, and Mom enrolled in college. And as soon as she finished that first year, he went to her mother and said, you know, I want to marry your daughter. And of course, her dad had died early on. I never knew any of my grandparents because they died before I was born, having been the last of 8 children. So, my mother's mother hesitated and said, "You want to marry my daughter? Now, what do you have to offer?" He said, "Well, I will do everything in my power to care for her, and I think I can make you proud of my being her husband." Well, Mom was as poor as dirt, as they say. But she had creative ideas in her mind, and she knew she wanted to have a wedding. So she said one day she was sitting there in the house looking through the window, and she said, "Wow, there are lace curtains at the window." So she asked her mom if she could have 2 of those curtains, and Mom could sew. She could look at a picture of something, and you would have thought she bought it, because she could make it just like the picture. Her mother gave her 2 of the curtains, and she made her wedding dress. But she had only 1 pair of shoes, and they were black. And she said, "I can't wear black shoes with my elf shoes." She was a proud woman. So she went to the barn, found some white paint, and painted the black shoes white. And she said, and they didn't crack until I was almost out the door for church. Now you talking about a creative woman. She was creative. So they got married, and because Mom was much younger than Dad, 13 years younger, she called him Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson. Yeah. And that's all we heard. "Oh, Mr. Johnson. Oh, yes, that's my husband, Mr. Johnson." And I don't know, it kind of brought a respect that you don't hear of these days. And we were just proud of them because there was Mr. Johnson, and there was Miss Elsie Mark Johnson. Now, let me tell you, there, I need to introduce mine. That's one of mine. Okay. Now, in Nigton, I want you to know that there were visionaries. I mean, there were people who could get together and think of doing things for this community that hadn't been thought of before. And you see, you had minds like the Liggins, the McClendons, the Marks, the Dixons, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but there are people here who know who they are. And they could get together and create things that would help the community. And that's what they set out to do. Now, Daddy served as the principal, the math teacher, the basketball coach, and can you believe the custodian? He swept the school. He did what was necessary to make things work, and to make them work in such a manner that people would say, "I didn't know we could do this out here." Yes, you can do anything you want to. You can create an atmosphere here in this community that everybody will be proud of. And that's what he did. You see, that basketball team that I'm talking about didn't lose a game for 10 years. And Daddy said, I've got to find somebody who can challenge us to a good game. So he had heard about Wheatley High School in Houston. So you know they didn't have cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So he wrote a letter to the principal and to the coach of the basketball team. And he said, I want to bring my team down to Houston to play you a game. I think we'll give you a good challenge. And of course, it was kind of a joke to the people in Houston. Nigton, where is that? Well, what Daddy said is that you don't let the name of a community define you. You don't let the name of a community determine your destination. You set that for yourselves. So, the letter was so convincing that the principal wrote back and the coach wrote back and said, okay, we don't know where Nigton is, we've never heard of it, and we think we're just going to beat you like nobody has ever beat you. So, now, they're getting ready to go to Houston to play Wheatley. They had no uniforms, but everybody had overalls. So he had the boys to go to a stump and take the axe and cut off the legs of the overalls. And that was what they wore. When they entered the gymnasium, people just fell on the floor laughing. Who is this coming in here thinking they can challenge us to a game? So, knowing Dad walked out in the middle of the gymnasium and said, hear ye. I want everybody to hear what I'm saying to my basketball players. He said, Nigton, don't let Wheatley score in the first quarter. And the people looked at each other and said, where did this man come from? He must be crazy. He said, I mean that. And I don't want you to score but 10 points in the first quarter. Well, the first quarter ended. Do you know Wheatley scored 2 points? But Nigton had 10. Yes. And when the game finally ended, Nigton had won the game. And Daddy said you could hear a pin fall. He got his boys together and they walked out in silence out of the gymnasium, having beaten the #1 team in the state of Texas. Wow. Wheatley High School. Nigton beat them. So they were winners. And then there was Nigton. You see, now Nigton is making a positive name. But Daddy wasn't satisfied with just, basketball. This man was a scholar, and he wanted to infiltrate the minds of the students. So he heard about the Interscholastic League that was held in Prairie View. And he said, okay, we're going to go to the Interscholastic League and we're going to compete in mathematics, spelling, and whatever else they have that has to do with academics. Do you know they won a prize? And this was on a Saturday night that they won, and Daddy wanted to get back to Nigton so that they could announce it in Sunday school. So he had a young man, I think they went in 3 cars. He had a young man driving his car. And unfortunately, the young man fell asleep and ran off into a dry creek bed. Daddy was pinned under the car. And he said, Daddy lived to tell me about this. Daddy said, I had my gold watch in my pocket, you know, a pocket watch. You don't see me nowadays. And Daddy said he called one of the guys over and said, young man, come over here. Get my watch out of my pocket and give it to my wife when you all get back to Nigton. Dad said he lay there and he thought about that. He said, young man, come here. Put my watch back in my pocket. I'm going to give it to my wife myself. And he did. He did. And then there was Nigton. Nigton was a winner in academics at the Interscholastic League. You see what I'm talking about? That vision that whatever people can do, we can do it. Because we're people and we have brains and we can learn and we can improve ourselves. And they did. And there was Nigton making a name for himself. You see, if you really have your mind set to do something, and you have people who can help out in achieving goals that you have set, anything can be accomplished. Now, my mom wasn't too bad either. Do you know she stayed out of college 35 years and reared us, along with Dad, of course, and then went back to college and graduated. She graduated, walked down the aisle with one of her sons, the youngest of the sons. Yes, that wasn't too bad for a Nigton girl. See, my mom was a Nigton girl. She grew up here in Nigton, one of the marks. So, you see, when I think about the advantage that I had being my mom and dad's daughter and learning from them, it reminds me of the fact that, see, when I went to college, I had graduated high school at 15, college at 19. And, you know, I thought I was pretty smart. But you know what I wasn't smart enough to know then? That I needed something else. And it was that Holy Spirit that I needed.
All right.
Because, you see, when you have that, you automatically have love. You have kindness. You have patience. You have joy. You have selflessness. And you see, I need to be able to step outside myself and love other people and help other people. And this is what I learned from my mom. I just had not begun to practice it. But I found out that I couldn't do without it. I couldn't make it without it. So embrace it all the time. And not always do I do what I know I need to do. But isn't it something that I know that and I can reach back and get that and say, Lord, forgive me. And thank Him. And because of that, I keep a gratitude journal. And it grounds me because it shows me that it's the little things that really can make a difference. You know, maybe a stranger smiled at me today, and that goes in my gratitude journal because that means something to me. And when I say, I need your hearts, and you need my heart, you see, that's what we need to be working toward these days. Yes, because we're all human beings, subject to error. But if we get together and give each other our hearts, look at what we can do. Look at what we can do. So, you know, I could talk all day. And you know, I thought about it when I got up here. I said, maybe I need to sing a song. You know, but I don't know when I can get my voice ready today. And we've heard such good music. You don't know how it warms my heart to be here because it's a kind of freeing of the spirit that we have here. And